Hello, and welcome to another edition of the Coach and Benway podcast. This is the Weekly Bile. The Weekly Bile for Saturday, October 27th, 2018, where we are going to talk about the things that make our bile rise and make us want to vomit. I am Coach Red Pill, as always, and I am joined, of course, by Dr. Benway. Dr. Benway, why don't you tell us the things that we are going to talk about and kick off the episode?
Sure thing. So today we'll talk about the mad bomber of the unexploding bombs of the Democratic Party, and all of the thoughts and trivial matters and less than trivial matters that came about. Megyn Kelly has apparently departed NBC on not so perfect terms. Maybe she should have left wearing blackface. After that, we have another wonderful, crazy person, Sinead O'Connor. You never heard of her, or at least unless you were conscious in the late 80s. She's now, after being crazy, trying to kill herself, converted to Islam. Well, congratulations. Solution that may have resolved that. A scientist of some sort decided what we should do for the good of the American people is put lithium in the water. I can't see what could go wrong. Our good friend Michael Avenatti has had, shall we say, a most difficult week from being fined for some odd $1 million in back taxes, to be having his office evicted, to being referred to the Justice Department, I think not once but twice. Yeah, he's well on his way to be the leading presidential candidate for the Democratic Party.
Yeah, if you were a basketball player, you'd say he's had a double-triple.
Yeah, exactly.
Or triple-double, whatever it's called. Yeah, triple-double, sorry.
He's in really good shape.
Oh.
And yeah, if there's a little bit of time at the end, we may talk about what's happening in the market, whether or not we're on the edge of our second interesting recession in 10 years. We'll see.
Yeah. So, okay, let's kick off with the bomber. Cesar Sayoc. One of the things that nobody's talking about is that this guy is Filipino. That's the interesting little takeaway. He seems to have been a complete incompetent, because there was fingerprints on the packages, DNA on the packages. And the thing is, see, as far as I know, and doctor, correct me if I'm wrong, they haven't said that if there was any explosive elements in these quote-unquote bombs. Was there explosive element, like gunpowder or something that would go off? Or was it just a fake bomb?
So I don't know if there was an explosive element, and I don't mean that in the sense that, there wasn't. I mean for lack of knowledge. Mm-hmm. What I did hear that there was some sort of material that, if had been projected, could have caused damage, but the bombs were not really designed in a way to go off. Right.
Well, yeah.
And the other interesting question that I have, you said he's Filipino, and I've heard like 7 or 8 different things. I've heard he's Latino, I heard he's Indian, like Seminole, and now I've heard he's Filipino. I have no fucking idea what he is, but apparently collectively what the media is very certain he is white. So the key to being white in the media, let's just be very clear. If your blood percent native is 0.001%, a la Elizabeth Warren, you're an Indian.
Yeah.
If it's 99.999%, you're white. Just be very clear about that.
No, I mean, look, the bomber situation. First of all, the timing. It's just a little too goddamn weird, because we hadn't talked about this last week. It I don't forget when it broke, this thing, but anyway, the timing is way too weird, way too coincidental, too serendipitous. It is 2 weeks away, and all of the people who were mailed with these ersatz bombs were the Obamas, the Clintons, Debbie Wasserman Schultz. Got one because it was actually addressed to Eric Holder, but the address got screwed up, and so it was returned to the return to sender, and the sender's address was Debbie Wasserman Schultz. Of course, she is not implicated in this. And all of them were Democratic figures. Also, Robert De Niro, I think, and
and George Soros. What was funny is that
George Soros, right? Yeah.
George Soros and I think the Clintons were the first ones.
Right.
And then the rest kind of came through, CNN being a big one. What got funny to me was that there was trail on bombs. And I was joking to people. I said, watch, it will be all of the remaining presidential contenders who didn't get a bomb because they're going to feel neglected, and it would have been better for their campaign had they got a bomb. And literally the last bomb they found, it's like, we just found it. It was hidden somewhere. One to Cory Booker and Kamala Harris. Like, of course it is.
Yeah.
And that's why, I was talking to you about this. I said, look, I don't know exactly what's going on. Could very well be a loon who doesn't know what the fuck he's doing. Or it could be just the old tradition of the Democrats saying, hey, if shit gets bad, throw a brick through your office and then call a press conference kind of thing.
Yeah.
Because it was clear, in retrospect, that these things probably weren't designed to go off. At the very least, if they were, the guy completely didn't know what the fuck he was doing.
No, yeah,
my
clearly.
suspicion, it was just a fuck around with people. And this guy apparently has had a history of fucking around with people since the early 90s.
Yeah, he's got a long rap sheet with all kinds of different charges. Stupidly, I didn't have it queued up, but all kinds of things. He actually, one of them was
there was like bomb threats, all sorts of shit. It's like that predates the president, of course.
Yeah.
But remember, what CNN would have you believe that Trump radicalized this man.
Yeah, and, not Maxine Waters saying, when you see those people, you confront them, and okay, look, clearly we will never know really if this was some sort of false flag operation, if this was just some loony who decided to do this shit. We don't really know. The guy is a registered Republican, apparently, but we'll never know who he's with or anything of the sort. He might actually not even be the guy. Who knows? Because at this point, anything is possible. The kind of bullshit that's been going on and the lies and obfuscations and so forth, it could mean anything. I don't think that it has garnered that much sympathy for the Democrats, because there is the generalized perception that this seems very bullshitty. You know what I mean? You tell me. What do you think?
I know a lot of people around me. I mean, it could be biased by the people I talk to, but I know most people, my father included, had like, this smells bullshitty. And particularly, we were saying, because the fact that none of them went off means that, okay, this is a stunt of some kind, regardless of who decided to do it.
Yeah.
So that's certainly a reaction. And the thing I was worried most about is trying to neuter from the president the most effective campaign things he's been doing, basically the harsh, rhetoric, the enemy of the people, the media, lock her up, all that thing. The Democrats are a mob. They may have neutered the ability to use Democrats are a mob, at least for the broader population, but surprisingly, the president did not really silence his rhetoric on that. I was afraid of that. Because they were trying to mute something that has been very effective against.
Yeah, extremely effective.
And when they said to the president, do you think you're going to tone down your rhetoric? He says, if anything, I've already been toned down given the treatment that I and my side have had. And I said, good, this is right. And I knew that I had suspected that the president wouldn't back down. And I was happy to see that he didn't. So hopefully that will lead, that's a signal that, its effects are not particularly long-term on that front. Or at least that's my hope.
Well, what's interesting to me is that the Democrats seem to be throwing everything they can at the wall to see if what'll stick. They're going, freaking out over this bomb thing, but there's nothing to freak out over it. Because look, I saw pictures of it. And the bomb looked like a prop from a bad movie, okay, from like an 80s movie, like somebody who just did not know what they were doing. It didn't have that, like the meticulousness of somebody like Ted Kaczynski. Ted Kaczynski, his bombs were like little Swiss watches, right? They were all neat and tidy and shit, right?
And many of them went off.
Yeah, they did. Exactly. Okay. A lot of people were laughing and saying, obviously, it's not a Republican because a Republican would have done the job right and would have gone off. Well, be that as it may. The fact of the matter is, none of these bombs went off. It's not even clear that they really were bombs in the sense that there was some sort of flammable or explosive material that could have been ignited and caused a mess. So what are we talking about? Are we talking about basically, a dozen fake bombs that were sent to different people as a quote-unquote joke? Okay, now, yeah, it's an awful joke, sure. The guy should be prosecuted, sure, but there's nothing there, okay? And anyway, it doesn't change the fact that the Democrats and their policies and their ideas and everything about them is just fucking nuts. So I think that actually this is not going to do much good for the Democrats. And here's another weird thing. The way that news is moving with such speed, a day becomes like a week becomes like a month, and we're still 2 weeks away. I don't even think that this is going to be around by the time the day of the election. And I also think that most of the people have made up their minds. And furthermore, I think that most people who are going to vote against Democrats, who would have voted for Democrats before, but are going to vote against Democrats now, I think they've already made up their minds. And I think that what is turning them off is the perception of Democratic Party hysteria. I think that that's the thing. And the fact that, by the way, Hillary is saying that she wants to run again in 2020. I don't think that that is doing the Democratic Party any fucking favors now, do you?
Well, how could it? I mean, seriously, at this point, I don't even know that the Democrats even think about it that way. I mean, how many of them really think, oh, what we need is Hillary at the bat one more time?
Yeah.
I really, I mean, despite everything we want to say about them, I don't think people really in that party want her to do that. And I think the other element that I think came out of this, which some people on our side were expecting was to happen, and I think it did, was the overplay, right?
Yeah.
Of the bombing situation, which was like, the first statement that came out of Zucker's, the president of CNN, the first thing that came out of his fucking mouth was, not his mouth, but his written statement was, oh, you see what happens when you bump up the rhetoric here. Trump is not doing good things. It's clear they haven't learned anything.
Yeah.
And so everybody knows that, okay, you're capitalizing on it. It's like it's like a bunch of, see what's happened to me. Give me my pity patty sad points. Here's my tin cup. Give me some money. It was also funny when, and Robert De Niro got his thing. I'm sure people also made like, see monkey do, which was funny that this kind of rhetoric would come out in relation to Robert De Niro. Does that mean that Robert De Niro now has to apologize for Hinckley trying to kill President Reagan for the sake of getting Jodie Foster into bed with him?
Yeah,
I mean, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, look, I think that, De Niro's going to be dining out on this story for years, that he got a bomb, big fucking deal. I like I said, I don't even think it's a real bomb. And we'll have to wait until the whole full investigation.
The last 7 movies of his career have been the real bombs. Come on.
Yeah. But what's interesting, the FBI is going to politicize this thing. They're not going to release more information about this guy or about the bombs themselves until after the midterms. They're not going to say, for instance, oh, they were just fake bombs. They were just, ersatz bombs, but not the real thing. They're not going to say that until after the election. Okay? And so the Democrats are going to be able to play into that ignorance, because if it comes out, oh yeah, there was just like, pretend bombs, but they couldn't possibly work because there was nothing to go off, to set off. There's no gunpowder or explosives or C4 or whatever the hell bombers use nowadays. Then it's a non-story. It's just some random wacko sent, a dozen pretend bombs. What's that? That's nothing. There's a wacko in 330 million people. Of course, there's going to be some whack job, right? So what's interesting is how this plays out in the news. And I think that that's a good point to segue into the the Megyn Kelly story. Oh, man, that was goddamn funny. Did you hear about the deal points on that one?
Oh yeah, she got basically, if I knew I could get that much money for being on NBC and talking about blackface, I'd have taken that deal. Which she got like $69 million to walk away.
Yeah. It was what she signed a 3-year deal for $69 million. That she signed it in January of 17, right? Or started in January of 17. So she was roughly almost 2/3 of the way through that deal. So she's basically going to get roughly, I'd guess, about $27 million for free, for just sitting on her ass and just sunning herself and having a good old time. Because even though they're firing her now, they have to keep on paying her until the expiration of her deal. It was pretty funny because this whole thing started over the comment. She made a fairly silly comment saying that, oh, when I was a kid, people wore blackface for Halloween, and it was okay so long as it was like an appropriate costume. Look, I'm roughly her age, okay? I'm 50, she's 47. And parenthetically, no, I would never bang her. Never. We were roughly the same age. I spent time and spent several Halloweens in the South, in one of the southern states. No way would anybody of her cultural, socioeconomic background, her obvious socioeconomic background, would have allowed a kid to go out in blackface back in the late 70s, early to mid 80s. No fucking way. That's just bullshit. Okay. So I don't know what she was trying to say with that. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't get the full context other than, just trying to give the benefit of the doubt. I think if, her suggestion was if you were going to paint yourself with a color and it happened to be black and you were doing some other reason, like you weren't, doing a Sambo routine, you were just literally, I don't know if you were like painting yourself as an old witch and for some reason you use black paint. I don't know why you would.
Well, like a zombie, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, could be. I don't know. It doesn't really ultimately matter to me what her reasons are. I'm pretty sure it's silly. But the funny thing in this context is all the baggage she brings with her and her decision to jump out of the frying pan and into the fire, as it were.
Yeah, no, she got blown out. She got blown the fuck out. And look, it had to do with the fact that her show was underperforming. She had the 9 a.m. slot, and her show was called Megyn, I think. On NBC. Now, NBC's Today Show has always been a ratings powerhouse because it is relatively inexpensive to produce and people watch it. It was the brainchild of, what's the name of this guy? Sigourney Weaver's dad. John Weaver, I think his name. It slips my mind. But he was the brainchild of this back in the 50s, of the Today Show, of an early morning show, national. And nobody thought it would succeed, and lo and behold, it is the biggest moneymaker for NBC. It's just huge, right? Because people turn on their TVs in the morning. Now, they lured Megyn Kelly away from Fox, and she'd already had some problems at Fox, principally with, what's his name, the Bill O'Reilly, and just in general, just, at loggerheads. She's a difficult woman, which is understandable. She's a very ambitious woman. An ambitious woman like that who gets to those kinds of positions, she's not going to just roll over for whatever is going on. She's going to fight for what she thinks is right, and she's going to be a little bit of a diva, or a lot diva, right? Okay. So they hire her. They steal her away from Fox. She left Fox because she wanted more money from them, and NBC was happy to oblige, and they gave her the sweetheart deal. $23 million a year, guaranteed for 3 years, to be renegotiated during the course of the third year. And I think that NBC had some sort of option, and who knows the specifics. It doesn't matter. The point is, it was a pay or play deal. That is, she gets paid no matter what, and it was ironclad. CAA, Creative Artist Agency, was her rep who negotiated that deal, at least the deal points. And man, I mean, she should be thankful for those people who dropped her. By the way, CAA dropped her over this comment. When an agent drops you, that's when you know your career is over, because agents are very shrewd about their clients' careers, and see, they drop a client when they know that client is just not going to produce anymore. It's just not going to be producing any more fees, because remember, agents get between 10 and 15% gross of their talent, of whatever talent they're representing. So when an agent drops a talent, it's because the agent has come to the conclusion, or the agency has come to the conclusion, that that talent will not be producing in the future. Now, that was telling. Word is, Fox is not interested in taking her back. She's getting a pot of money. She's going to lose 50% of it to taxes, right? And, another chunk of that to her agents and managers and stuff. I mean, if I had to guess, ballpark, I'd say that she's going to walk away with about 40% of that $69 million. What's that? About $28 million over 3 years, right? Which is pretty good. $28 million is enough to set you up for life. But I don't think that she's going to have any career post NBC. I could be completely wrong, but I think that this is curtains for her career. Yeah.
Well, I mean, I never rule out the possibility of a second act for everybody, because it always happens.
You never know. Yeah, sure.
My attitude with Megyn Kelly is, this is the prime example of you've just pissed off too many people who would come to your defense and actually care.
Yeah.
It's clear that when she attacked the president during the campaign in 2016, and then when she went over to NBC and she was complaining about Fox, it's a career move. Everybody kind of recognized that. And in the process of doing so, everybody thought oh, she's just another lying bitch on the media. okay, so there's your right wing side going off, but it's not like the left wing side is particularly thinking, oh, she's a really
No,
stellar sport. She
no.
proved what she was on Fox, which was titillation for middle-aged men, right?
Yeah.
Middle-aged and older men on Fox. Ooh, there's someone slightly younger than 50 on the channel. Ooh, that got my pecker hard, that kind of thing. And then now she's no longer performing that. The only people I saw go, bending out of their way to say, "Oh, Megyn Kelly," were the conservative Inc. kind of
Neocons,
the neocons, your Ben Shapiro's,
Yeah, the shills, the shills,
yeah.
the people who aren't really conservative. They pretend to be conservatives. Yeah, those fucking people.
Which was even weird for me to see that, because I'm like, you guys aren't even going to get much out of her either. I mean, so I just felt like it really came across as a story of someone who overstayed her welcome, and we kind of predicted it too. Like we figured she wasn't going to really lure an excited audience at MSNBC or NBC broadly, so it's kind of inevitable, regardless of whether she made the blackface comment. It was just an easy out.
Yeah, I think that they were looking for a way to get rid of her. This is going to cost some people their careers, because her contract and gearing up her show and the whole thing, that must have set back NBC about $100 million. Okay, and they did not see the returns on that investment. Not at all. So, I mean, if I had to guess just offhand, I'd say maybe it's going to be like a $50 million write-off, and that's got to hurt, because NBC is not in the crispiest of shape, I mean, they can't really afford to have too many $50 million fuck-ups. Maybe one or one and a half more, and that's it. You know what I'm saying? So
my worldview of business would tell me that I'd love to see people bounced or punished for fuck-ups like this, but I've also been around long enough to know, especially for that industry, people,
they fail
slide
upward.
by.
Yeah, they fail upward.
They do fail upward. I feel like, especially in that industry, I feel like some of these, on-site or, business side producers get away with murder. Well, and it could just be my generational thing, independent of producers. It's just, they allow a lot more fuck-ups than I would have expected.
Well, it's a certain level. There's a certain level where you're at the C-suite. Yeah, people fail upward. They can go from failure to failure. Marissa Mayer and such. They fuck up one place, and then they just get kicked upstairs to another even higher position, and they get to fuck up there again. Whereas there are certain like middle echelon people that once they fuck up, they just vanish. They're gone forever. Okay, and that's an interesting thing, because it's sort of like the elites of not just the news business, the TV news business, but all of corporate America. The elites, you get to a certain level and you cannot fail. I mean, or let me phrase it. You can fail as much as you want, of course, but you will not be expunged. You will not be cast out. It's really weird, but that's what I see. It's a weird kind of corruption, where people are like, oh yeah, he fucked up and he got fired, but he's a great guy, so let's bring him in. It's just very bizarre. Yeah. Have you noticed that?
Several times. I mean, and I at first I thought, well, maybe it's because they have lower expectations for a certain generational group, and then I thought, well, maybe it's more than that. To your point, it could be, oh, you're part of the club, so hey, it was. They try to rationalize it. Oh, it was the circumstances at the old company. We'll get something out of it this way. I don't really know why, when, or where, but it does put pressure. It's the general context of business and everything.
Yeah, but
you have a lot of fuck-ups that you got a lot of fuck-ups that you're carrying through, and then the success is on the shoulders of about a third of the people with that particular job title that not fuck up and carry the rest of the organization. It's very common.
Yeah. And by the way, I'm starting to page through Skin in the Game, the Nicholas Taleb book, and we're going to be doing an episode on that, right? And he was saying something that's very true, that some people respond to Trump because he looks scarred. Not physically scarred, but in the sense of like his career has been scarred with big failures. And the fact that he's lost $1 billion of his own money, to a lot of people, negates the resentment they would have to him being a billionaire. It's sort of like, yeah, he's a billionaire, but he's lost a shitload of money. He's gone bankrupt a couple of times. So it's like, okay, he's like one of us kind of thing. But it goes back to something that I've noticed that bothers me profoundly about the corporate world and not just the corporate world, but the entire world, business world. is that, see, you have to be perfect and shiny and perfect and clean and without a dent on you. You have to be like a brand new car, like without a scratch. And that's impossible if you have some mileage, if you have some actual experience. You start doing things and getting experience, you're automatically going to suffer dents and scratches, just like a car. Okay? If I was born in 1968, okay, so you buy a Mustang from 1968. The only way you can have that Mustang from 68 be pristine and perfect today is if you kept it under glass and never put a mile on the odometer. That's the only way. If you put a mile on it, you put 10 miles, 100, 1,000, 100,000 miles on that odometer, you're going to suffer scratches, bumps, bruises, and it's going to be kind of ugly in some parts. And yeah, sure, you're going to be able to take it to the body shop and fix it up a little bit, but it's always going to be there, right? But the thing is, see, the corporate world seems to radically discriminate against those people who have failed or not done well in any point of their lives, which is a disaster, because it's those people who have failed and who have picked themselves up after the fact who know the most, who are the most experienced and the most resilient and the toughest. And that failure is your only teacher in life. If you have people who never fail, then those people don't know fucking shit about anything. You know what I mean?
Well, it's two categories of, excuse me, failure that's kind of happening here, right? When we're talking about the likes of the Megyn Kellys of the world, or like the guaranteed elite, as it were, they certainly have failures in their lives, but it's failures without consequence, and it's failures in what in my mind is the things that matter most, namely the success of the business as such.
Yeah,
they seem to get away with that. The failures they never forgive are, like you said, with the mileage. If someone's very successful, but hey, he said some bad words to his co-workers, or hey, personally, he just said, I have to, I got to get the fuck away from this business for a while. And he had some personal time, stuff that really makes you human. That's the stuff they'll never forgive.
Yeah.
It seems to me. Or if they do forgive it, it's like they punish you for it. It's like, oh, we'll take you in, but we gotta, blah, blah, blah,
knock you down a few pay pegs or whatever. Yeah.
Exactly. That's and to me, it should be the exact opposite.
Yeah.
Yeah. But that's just me.
Yeah. Well, so anyway, Megyn Kelly, gone and perhaps forgotten, we shall see. The other crazy woman of the week was Sinead O'Connor. Oh yeah. For those of you who don't know, there was a time when Sinead O'Connor was the most exciting thing ever. She had it all. Okay, she was stunningly pretty. I mean, one of the most beautiful women ever. I mean, yeah, and she was fucking bald. Okay. But, when she came out in, 87 with The Lion and the Cobra, that was her first album. She was this 19-year-old thing. Oh, man, she was just smoking hot. She was nutty as a loon. You could tell right then, right? The album was extraordinary. She wrote most of it, and she produced it herself. She fired her producer, and that should have been a fucking clue. That they wanted to make her like a pop sensation kind of thing. And she was like, fuck that, I'm going to do my music as I see fit. And she fired her producer, her label. Her label had put a producer in place, and she fired him and produced the album herself. The Lion and the Cobra was an extraordinary album. From the first track, Jackie, the whole thing was fucking marvelous, right? And then she followed that up in 89 with I Do Not Want What I Don't Have, or whatever it was called. I forget the name of it. The one with Nothing Compares to You, which was a huge hit. It was a Prince tune that she covered, and it was extraordinary. The video was, at the time, very memorable, because it had that film noir look of like lit light across her face kind of thing, and it was a great video. And it wasn't that groundbreaking, but it was memorable, which is what a video should be. The song was just beautiful. She had such a beautiful, beautiful voice, incredibly talented, a great songwriter. She the first track on that song, on that album, Feel So Different, is just amazing. And it was just track after track. I mean, yeah, she's famous because she did the cover, but she herself was a great songwriter. The Emperor's New Clothes, Black Boys on Mopeds, The last day of our acquaintance.
I mean, like, basically, long story short, she was basically the hottest shit. I mean, she was on SNL and everything, and that's where she really got her notoriety. Was that we say her being a loon? Well, her first big notoriety, which got a lot of people's attention, to put it mildly, was when she was on SNL. She had her little political stunt of being annoyed with the Pope, who at the time was John Paul II. This is before the big scandals of, the sex things in the church, and John Paul was still basically spry. She basically took a picture of the Pope, like either ripped it in half.
Yeah, ripped it in half. Ripped it in half. No, she didn't piss on it, but ripped it in half.
Yeah, she ripped it in half live on SNL, and I don't think Lorne was particularly pleased with that stunt, because the rest was pleased on that. Yeah, everybody was pissed off, and she's done this shit for a long time. She started to piss off everybody. She's like, "I'm the tough broad and everything." Well, a few years ago, she literally lost her mind. I think in Chicago, she literally was just wandering around, lost, almost as if like, that moment when you realize that someone in your family may have Alzheimer's. This actually happened in my family, where the person just doesn't come home because they forgot where they live, and they just go off somewhere, and something's wrong. That's basically what happened to her. She didn't have Alzheimer's, but she was just freaking the fuck out and was just wandering, almost like a homeless person in the Chicago North Shore side, so the very wealthy suburban areas of the North. She was freaking the fuck out, and lo and behold, just a few weeks ago, I guess, publicly, or maybe even this week, or a few days, she publicly announced that she's converted to Islam. I think her name now is Shahuda or some stupid thing like that.
Yeah.
But this tells something that I've been saying for a long time, that a lot of the upstart, rebellious, so-called feminist icons are women who are ultimately looking, at the end of the day, to be dominated. This is an act of someone who wants to submit. It's the very nature of Islam.
Yeah, that's the name of the religion, for crying out loud. It is to submit. That's what it means. Oh man, yeah. She's nuts.
And you can see how it logically happens, right? I mean, of these moments of acting out. These are moments of someone in extraordinarily mental pain who is looking for a solution that will take away that pain. It happened to be Islam. It could easily, in the old days, have been the fucking Catholic Church. She could have been a nun. Yeah. And you got a sense, based on the imagery that she was playing with, that maybe she kind of wanted that at one point.
I think she did.
For whatever reason, the church, I mean, we could go into it, but that's a whole episode by itself. The church just didn't have the moral strength that it used to have. And so now, guess what? Now she's Shahuda in Islam, and I'm sure, some fucker's going to run around and, beat her around and say, you learn how to be a good fucking wife. And she'll say, oh, yes, I want to.
Because ultimately it seems to me that a lot of these crazy women, they want to be dominated. And many times, and this is the thing, I am not advocating this, okay? I have to be clear about this. But many times these women welcome physical abuse, physical and mental abuse. They want that. They need that. It's insane, if you ask me. But that has been my experience, that there are certain women who want to be dominated and they want to feel abused. I don't quite know why. And they welcome it with relish. There are lots of stories fucking in the Bible. It's not an unusual thing. Perhaps it's unusual because we right-thinking people, good liberals and all the rest of it, figure, oh, no woman on her right mind would want to be abused. But, this woman is going into Islam. One of the first things that she did was that she sang some song that only men are allowed to sing in Islam. It's clear that she wants to be put in her place. She is not going to be making those transgressive moves into the religion that she just joined and presumably knows all about, because she joined and converted and all the rest of it. She's not going to be making those moves unless she wants somebody to stand up and just God knows what to her,
an ex-girlfriend of mine had a very similar mentality to this, and she described it in a way that was fairly, an extreme example, but I think it was probably true. She's like, it's like disciplining a dog. The dog without direction will push and push to figure out what it can do. And when it's looking for you to push back and say no, and to be strict and consistent, because if you're trying to discipline a dog and you say, oh, you can do this sometimes but not this time, and you're not you're wishy-washy about it, the dog just kind of freaks out because it doesn't know what to do. It's confused fundamentally, and you just have to be firm in what you do and clear. And she was describing that as the method by which she, was looking for some sort of structure in her life.
Yeah.
And I'm like, yeah, that's pretty much what's going on here. And it's not every single woman who's going to operate this way.
No, it's relatively few.
Crop.
It's relatively few.
It's a certain crop of the body of women.
They tend to be very smart. They tend to be very, very smart, very intelligent, and very talented. Hyper, high strung, if you want to call it that. But they're a little bit, too wound up, and they're nutty and they're attractive. That's another thing, Look, this woman, it's extraordinary. It's ridiculous. It's, but Sinead is going to pop up every once in a while. But to me, it's sort of like sad because I see her now. She is a 50-year-old woman, 49-year-old woman, and she is aging badly. Millennial Woes or somebody or Condition Critical tweeted out her picture, right? When she announced that she had converted to Islam. And I saw the picture and I tweeted back, she sort of looks like Bono, but she does. Her face is turned mannish. She's now a lesbian, as I understand it, or bisexual or pansexual, whoever the fuck knows. She just does any hole or any organ that comes her way at this point. And she's nuts. And by the way, anybody wondering, she's had kids, okay? She's had several children and poor children. I mean, God knows what's happened to them, And it's just so sad and pathetic because she had so much talent and she peaked out at 21. And she's never come back. Never, that was her high water mark. It's just a shame, It really is a shame.
Maybe they should have put lithium in her water.
Well, that's the fourth topic of our week. That the good people at Vice, was it? Were suggesting, well, they put fluoride in the water to improve people's teeth. Why don't they put some lithium to improve people's mental health? Like, that's such a good idea.
Yeah, it was funny. It was like and they were thinking of it as a civil service. Like, look, there's a lot of anxious people out in the world, and our solution should be like fluoride to fix your teeth. We'll just put some mind-controlling substance in the water. And when I'm reading this, in my mind, all I can see is Alex Jones getting up, ripping off his shirt, and just running into Vice with whatever gun he had. Like, it's not going to happen. And kind of thing. It was that level of, yes, Alex, you're completely right. They're, the frogs, this time, more than the frogs turning gay, they want basically all people submissive. But it's funny because we joke about it, but it reminds me a lot of the typical solutions in our society right now, which is to say, okay, we have a lot of issues, clearly psychological, perhaps existentially based on, what the individual feels as his or her import to society, their sense of feeling lost. Can we resolve that at a social engagement level? Fuck no, we'll just put fucking chemicals into the consumables to keep them sedated.
Good God.
I mean, that's really the plan. That is the plan.
Fucking insane. And what the fuck were they thinking when they came up with such an idiotic idea? Good. I mean, and see, anybody who floats this, let me rephrase it. Anybody slightly sane, okay, would recognize that this is a horrible idea. That there is no way that people would take this well. There is no universe where people would sit down collectively, like a majority of people would sit down and say, this is a pretty good idea. A little bit of lithium in the drinking water. Sure, why not? Shower with water and lithium. Yeah, you give it to the little kitties. Yeah, the little newborns. Chill them the fuck out. Maybe they'll sleep through the night or maybe sleep forever. Who knows? It's lithium in the water. I won't feel any pain if my child dies because of the fucking lithium in the water. So yeah. In what universe did these fuckers think that this was sane? I just want to know that. Who came up with this idea? Let's shoot him,
Well, Vice needed to a break between all of their fetish porn articles to have something really intellectually stimulating. Which is funny because I'm pretty sure lithium in the water would reduce your ability to be stimulated by much of anything.
I think so. Yeah, I think that I actually don't. I have no fucking idea, but I understand that lithium robs you of your sex drive because it just chills you out. How is it that these people? I don't understand the stupidity or the fear of the average person having any kind of independence, an urge to control everything, everybody. That's
Well,
my
like I
only
said,
conclusion.
this is something I've noticed for a while, and it keeps bothering me. It's not necessarily progressive, but let's call it like the progressive, liberal, democratic solution to a lot of things is always to treat the mass body of people as a chemical soup that just needs another chemical in it to just be modified and achieve the conclusion they want. This is very common, and it's engaging people and changing how they think and engage. Fuck that. That's too hard. That can't be done. It's operating on a phantom to begin with. Let's do something we really understand, which is chemical compounds thrown into the water. I'm really harping on this because I think it is consistent. We'll tiptoe around the problem, or we'll address the symptoms. All that exists in the world is a collection of symptoms, no causes. At the end of the day, and that's very troubling and bothersome to me. That's how they solve it. Like, or work relations. Like, you think to yourself, okay, if men and women are in the workforce, how do they get along? How do we make sure that they're working in a way that's healthy for everybody around? Do you figure out a way to how do we make sure that people are interacting in a healthy way? Maybe there are too many women or not enough women or not enough men in the office. What's that? Oh, no, we'll just have these sexual harassment policies that are draconian, and it will address the symptoms. You go down the list. This is how they function. This is how they problem solve. In other words, they don't problem solve.
Well, yeah. Look, first of all, I don't think that anybody sane is going to allow this to happen. I think that most people recognize instinctively that this is a horrible fucking idea, right? And that this idea is just it's all good and fine to float out a stupid idea, okay, and just wait for it to get shot down. But I'm actually kind of curious to start noticing who's the one paying attention to this idea and saying, yeah, that's a good idea. That's the thing. Actually, now that I think about it with a little more composure, or whatever you want to call it, more cool-headed, after I ranted and vented a little bit, thinking about it, those people who are in favor of this idea of putting lithium in the water are the people who are afraid of quote-unquote normal people. They're afraid of them. Either they are themselves need lithium because they're fucked up in the head and they a misery loves company kind of situation, right? And they want to have the whole world to accompany them on their little lithium trip, right? Or it's people who are fundamentally suspicious and distrustful of other people's autonomy and want to curtail it by way of medication. I bet you'll find a lot of people. The people who think that this is a good idea are probably the same people who think that deplatforming is a good idea, who think that there should be free speech zones, which basically means you can't say anything except in this very small delineated area that we will, demarcate and make smaller and smaller as we see fit. They're the people who are afraid of their fellow citizens. They are people who are ultimately undemocratic, that want to end the free agency of most of their fellow citizens and do what they think is right for all of us. They're the totalitarians.
I think there's a correlation to a lot of that stuff, but I also think that the people who think, oh, our solution to this matter is to put lithium in the water supply are frankly people who probably use it themselves. I can tell you when I was in college, there was a correlation I saw with people's politics and how they dealt with their personal demons. Not always, but sometimes.
Yeah.
And I know a lot of folks in college, and I never really encountered it until college, where people literally went about their days like, oh, the anxiety of these things is too much. I'm just going to pop a Vicodin whenever I need to. I mean, they were literally, and usually girls, going through life under the assumption that a medical intervention of some sort of drug, legal or otherwise, would be the mechanism which by they were getting through, the next part of the day, and they proceeded forward. And I have a strong feeling that people are just saying, well, if I'm, this is how I function, maybe the rest of you should just do the same. And then I don't think they ever really think through the implications of that.
Yeah. By the way, that thing about girls, they love their medication, and girls are the ones who are clamoring for hormone replacement therapy and turning into men, especially college-educated women, because it seems to be like a fashion now. I'm not kidding, which I find bizarre, but it's bizarre because I'm a guy. But thinking it a little bit more coolly and understanding that women have this tremendous need for compliance, transgenderism is becoming cool. And so, yeah, of course you're going to have women, especially more educated women, who are desperate to always be on the cutting edge of fashion, saying, oh, yeah, this would be a good idea. It's insane. But, the Salem witch hunts were insane. And, well, there you go, right? The Spanish Inquisition was insane, and, it happened.
Should have just had lithium in the water. We wouldn't have had the witches.
Yeah,
we wouldn't have had the Inquisition.
Yeah, but
this is the solution, people.
Yeah, exactly. Now, going back to this thing, I have to admit that I'm interested in those people who are these totalitarians. That I'm realizing that's the thing I'm really interested in. The totalitarians, these people who are more than willing to put the lithium in the water for the good of mankind. That has to be some special kind of evil, if you ask me. There's something deeply wrong with such people.
Well, to me, the scary part is that they don't know that they're operating that way. I think of them sometimes, and this has been an old cliche, but I think there's truth to it, of the scientist who conceives of the world as a reduced model that has inputs and outputs.
Yeah, mechanistic. Mechanistic.
Very mechanistic. The joke about it is that, they are evil in the sense that they do not know that their model has been oversimplified as to effectively be false. It's inaccurate. It does not take into account the realities of existence. And so what bothers me about things like this is not only is it like, oh, we'll fix the symptoms, but it's also a manifestation of, it's a top-down view of everything. We know what moves a fucking society. I know what's the important key factors. You worried about all these other side things that this could do to your little interactions. It's fucking trivial. Get out of my face.
Yeah.
Thing, the attitude. And it's the
arrogance.
The totalitarianism through ignorance, almost.
Well, we keep circling back on this. We've talked about this stuff on other episodes, and we keep circling back, and what we're basically saying is that we object to this arrogance of people of our class. And it's an arrogance, if you get right down to it, that comes from the success of previous generations that have put us here at this peak of civilization. But frankly, it's a civilization that our generation did not build. Or let me phrase it, that the generations that are currently in power did not build. You look at the people in the Clinton and Obama administrations that were and the Bush administrations that were so cavalier about going to war. These were people who had never gone to war. They never went to Vietnam. The only one who did go was Colin Powell, right? They were very cavalier about going to war. They had not earned this tremendous war-making power that they were wielding, and therefore they wielded it arrogantly, without any thought to the consequences. And it seems to me that those people who are thinking, lithium in the water would be a good idea, are guilty of the same sort of arrogance, that they have inherited a power, but they did not earn it, and therefore they do not understand its true power and its true danger, and why it should be wielded so cautiously, if at all. You see what I'm saying?
It just reminds me that, to recommend to people, read the books of Kurt Vonnegut. In particular, read, I think it's Cat's Cradle.
Yeah.
Which is a similar idea, which is scientists have created, for reasons that God knows why, Ice 20 or Ice 29? Ice 9, which is basically a substance which turns water into ice at room temperature.
Yeah.
And if it were to get into the actual human water supply, the whole water supply would turn to ice at room temperature, and the planet would die as a result, because you can't do anything with the water. His whole premise through that book is to deal with scientists like this under these conditions. And I won't tell you what happens at the end of the book. You'll just have to read it.
It's not a happy ending, guys. Yeah. Yeah, but anyway, let's talk about happy ending. Oh, what's his name? Avenatti? What's
Are
his
you
first
saying
name?
Avenatti, Michael Avenatti? Are you talking that the creepy porn lawyer got a happy ending, or we got a happy
We got
ending?
a happy ending in the story of the
Yeah, I
creepy
know.
porn
Yeah.
lawyer. Well, perhaps a
Oh,
little
it
bit
was so much fun.
premature, but you give the pressies on that one. God, that was fucking fun.
All right, so Michael has had an interesting rise and fall, shall we say. Man certainly got attention in the media very recently, representing Stormy Daniels. She made her presentations that, oh, I fucked the president, and he paid me hush money, so I
Yeah, and
would review my
I felt
story. And
raped.
I told it anyway, which means never pay a woman anything.
Yeah.
Yeah, and because she'll always talk. This idea of hush money is a joke. So you got notoriety from that. Attacked the president, this, then the other, and everybody realizes this guy's just a scummy lawyer. But I repeat myself. Slick skin, always trying to look like he has work done on him. Most recently got into a lot of hot mess because during the Kavanaugh hearings, when every woman out of the woodwork seems to come out and say, he touched me, he gang raped me and everything. Michael Avenatti brought in the third accuser, or the second and third, I think.
Yeah,
but
second
I think
and third. And yeah.
And came, look, I got these other stories and this, that, and the other. And this week, a whole series of fun things happened to him. First, outside of all of this business politically, the man owes back taxes or back fees to someone. There's some sort of dispute, and it went to court, and the lawyer said, you owe $4 some odd million. I don't know the exact.
A lot.
A
lot.
It's a shitload, essentially. There was that. Maybe a little bit earlier, maybe a couple weeks ago, the judge dismissed his case on behalf of Stormy Daniels against Trump, and not only dismissed it, but dismissed it in a way that Trump could collect his legal fees from Michael Avenatti and
Stormy Daniels.
And Stormy Daniels. And the joke I always had was, oh, all you fuckers who paid to her GoFundMe money, that's going to the president. So have a lot of fun with that. So that business happened. He had to pay the taxes. He got evicted. His firm got evicted from its place of business, probably for payment or expectations of lack of non-payment. And to top it all off, Grassley, the head of the committee, upon realizing, like, hey, something doesn't really smell right with Avenatti's story, referred him to either the Justice Department or whatever legal body oversees these things, and said, I think this guy was fucking lying to us. Go deal with it.
Yeah,
and he did that not once but twice, because after the first one was submitted, they were digging around NBC. NBC had information during the time of the Kavanaugh hearing that said this story's bullshit, and sat on it.
Yeah. But actually, let's go point by point. I want to go backwards to forwards. The Grassley thing seems, Grassley, he's like that doddering old guy on the judiciary, big fucking deal, right? It's a serious issue. And the reason is very simple. See, the Senate has, for all intents and purposes, prosecutorial power insofar as subpoenaing and witness and procuring witnesses. Whatever they say, by definition, is a sworn statement. If you misrepresent or say things that impede a Senate investigation, you can get into a lot of trouble, because it's no different from impeding a law enforcement like the FBI or a state trooper or whatever the hell from carrying out their duties. This is a felony, okay? And when the Senate refers something to the Justice Department, the Justice Department, what, do you think they're going to blow it off? Fuck no, because they have to deal with the Judiciary Committee, because they're the ones who give them funding and approve their funding. So if Chuck Grassley tells the DOJ, hey, go check out this guy, what do you think the Justice Department is going to do? He's going to blow off the old man? Fuck no. They're going to jump, and they're going to ask the old man, how high would you like us to jump this time? Because he approves their budget, okay? So Jeff Sessions, or whatever Assistant Attorney General handles the thing, he's going to rip Avenatti a new asshole. That guy is just, look, in 3 years, we're going to, in 3 years, fuck it. In 12 months, within 12 months, we're going to hear Avenatti declare bankruptcy, and he's going to be dismarred along the way, and probably wind up serving, 9 to 18 months in minimum security federal facility. That's pretty much what's going to happen to Avenatti. He's fucked. And he has no friends.
Because Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's funny because everybody was saying, "Oh, he could be a presidential contender." That was the other fun news story. He was on record.
Absurd. Yeah.
Well, it was they thought he'd be president. He was on record saying, a white man's going to have to be the nominee for the Democratic Party. I don't like that, but that's the only way people listen to what a white man says. And I'm just laughing my ass off. I said, thanks, Avenatti, for saying it and everything. But he's, Icarus just got a little bit too close to that sun, I suppose, and on borrowed wings on top of it.
Yeah.
I think the end case for him, I don't think he's long for being an attorney, but I do think in 5 years, it can easily be a situation in my mind where he's a talking head regular on some stupid media.
No.
I think so. Yeah.
No, because the Democrats hate his guts because they view him correctly as the person who totally crapped all over the Kavanaugh situation. Because, like, see, two women, okay, maybe, but the third woman, the Swetnick woman, who was just shady as fuck. Okay, the second woman also turned out to be shady as fuck. Okay, but that was like, it took a while to dig into her and find out that she was shady. Okay, it was the third woman. Okay, and that was Avenatti. That was all the way. Also, there's a rumor going on in 4chan. I have no reason to doubt it, of some guy who was saying how he and his girlfriend, as a goof, started fucking with Avenatti, and Avenatti was willing to pay him $75,000 for the girlfriend to testify and say that she'd also been raped by Kavanaugh. Of course, she hadn't been raped. It was just a big old goof, right? Because it was some 20-something girl pretending to be she was 50 and that'd been fucked by Kavanaugh back in the day, and he was willing to fork over money. If that is true, then there are going to be a lot more stories like that are going to pop up of him offering money for witness statements. That's felony shit. That's jail time shit. Okay, I think that this guy.
No, I agree, but I think you forget that people have short-term memory, and if in 5 years he says something, witty against the enemies of the left, he'll be, if not forgiven, at least he'll have his little place in the table. That's how these things happen. I've seen it happen before.
I'm not so sure. I mean, I just don't think so. I think that
I don't think he's going to be a lawyer for very long. That I have no doubt. And I'm sure back in the corner somewhere, Dershowitz is smiling his Jewish ass off over this, because Dershowitz and Avenatti got into it a lot during these past few months, because they were always both the talking heads relative to the president. Because Dershowitz thinks all this legal proceedings against the president is complete bullshit. There's no basis for any of it.
He's right.
Avenatti was attacking him, and then basically Dershowitz is like, I'm more or less said, and I'm paraphrasing here, but he says, "I'll just wait and watch you fucking crash and burn, because I know you won't. You'll fail before the ethics committee on your standing as a lawyer." And Avenatti kept on attacking him, but Dershowitz was just sitting back like, I'll see you hanged is the look on Dershowitz's face. And lo and behold, Alan proved to be right.
Dershowitz has always been a very clever guy insofar as being a lawyer and sort of like being on all sides of the fence or whatever, because he's a true fence sitter. But the thing is, he never pulls his punches and is willing to say, no, what the Democrats are doing is going to fail, or what the Republicans are doing is going to fail. Okay. And so in the long run, he might be temporarily unpopular because he's saying what is actually true. But in the short term, he's saying something that is true, but unpopular. But in the long term, everybody pretty much agrees that, he's on the up and up. Avenatti, man, yeah, sure, the Democrats loved him for a while, but, they know that the guy's sleazy as fuck. He's a typical LA lawyer, overproduced, in the sense of like, his skin and his hair and his clothes and everything. Just a little too much, you know what I'm saying? And,
right.
A little too much plastic surgery, a little too much time in the tanning booth, a little too much, very expensive skincare products, that kind of situation, right? That guy does not inspire confidence.
Everything about him says this is a shady lawyer. I mean, down the line. What's funny is, in our community, most people probably knew, just to compare with Alan Dershowitz, because I think it is actually almost the perfect comparison. Alan Dershowitz in our crowd, probably people know him as for his defenses of Israel as an attack on any criticism of it. I'm sure that bothers some people in our crowd, but he should get a lot of credit because this is a man who's consistently been an active defense lawyer.
Yeah.
He goes out of his way to say, no, if someone accuses you of bullshit, you have a right to a lot of things, and your lawyer should be there to protect you. He's consistently been on this.
Yeah.
He was very famously the defense attorney for Klaus von Bülow when everybody basically said, oh, this man killed his wife. Look at him. He's a creepy old European. And, Dershowitz, got pissed off, amongst other things, because the family hired a private prosecutor to deal with the situation, which he considered unacceptable because that prosecutor can decide what evidence goes to public record and what doesn't.
Yeah.
He says that's completely inappropriate for the legal system. And he should be recognized for the degree to which he's been consistent on this front. And he does not care what your political situation is. He's a very strict legal scholar in that regard. He's a professor.
I can get behind Alan Dershowitz. I think some of his ideas are kind of nutty. I remember when he was floating the idea that there should be judicial warrants to carry out torture, which I thought was just crazy.
Which I associate with his Israel positions, and I disagree with him on that. But that was like, oh, you want to torture, get a warrant, just like you have a FISA warrant.
Yeah,
and I said this to me in my mind, it goes into foreign policy situations, and to me, it goes into his position on Israel, which gets complicated. And I think I don't agree with him on everything on that front. And I think that's where my biggest challenges are. But as domestic, within the United States legal system, 90% of the time, I think he's definitely worth your attention. I suggest people give him credit where credit's due, not just because he's been pleasant to the president, but also watch or read Reversal of Fortune, which is a really fucking good story.
Yeah, it's a good book and a good movie. A very good movie, actually. And it wasn't just that Jeremy Irons earned a much well-deserved Oscar, but everybody in that picture was brilliant, and the whole thing was done beautifully. And the guy who played Dershowitz, his name slips my mind right now, who passed away, unfortunately. He was a great actor, great character actor.
He was.
He did a brilliant job. And it is a very good picture. It is an objectively a very good picture. One of the great 80s pictures, Reversal of Fortune. Definitely check it out. Our final topic was the market slides. Okay. Well, yeah, the market goes up, market goes down. Now, the whole rationale for the market slides, as I understand it, is basically Powell, the chairman of the Federal Reserve, has been slowly but surely upping the interest rates, which is interesting because, there's been the issue of unwinding QE and, getting dry gunpowder for the next recession. Now, the fact of the matter is it's been 10 years, almost 10 years since the last recession. If you say that the last recession ended roughly in March March of 2009 or the first half of 2009, then we're coming up on 10 years since a recession. This is the longest, quote unquote, expansion in modern U.S. economic history. I would argue that it hasn't been an expansion. It has been a reallocation of resources towards the elites at the expense of the middle and lower classes. But, I'm not an economist, so what do I know? But, that seems to be what has really gone on over the last 10 years with asset inflation and a redistribution of wealth whereby the students and young people are taking on enormous amounts of debt that is basically making the older generations and the upper classes exceedingly rich. I think the last 10 years have been economically catastrophic because, you look at the numbers, GDP, which is a trivial measure of the health of the economy. Sure, it's been going up, but you start looking at a more granular level and you see how the middle classes are shrinking even as their standing of living is decreasing. And there are more poor people and they are becoming poorer. And both the middle and lower classes and even the upper middle classes are getting more loaded down with debt, especially student loan debt, and also mortgage loans because they're back like a bad case of heroin, like a bad case of herpes. You know what I'm saying? And the only ones who are making out like bandits are the top 5%, the top 1%. Those people who have investable assets of over $100,000, they've made out wonderfully. But everybody else is getting fucked. But in the aggregate, the numbers seem to be positive in the aggregate. But yeah, if you have 100 people, right, and one guy earns $1 million, and everybody else, earns, instead of 40,000, they earn 30,000. Yeah, you add up everybody, and yeah, in the aggregate, it seems that like the whole pie is growing, but it's only growing for the one guy, not for everybody. And this is a reason of Trump. People still don't fucking get it. I don't quite understand why they find it so hard to understand. The last 10 years have been a fucking disaster. Sure, there hasn't been a quote-unquote recession as characterized by orthodox economists who don't know fuck all about what's really going on in the world. One of these days, I'll tell you a joke about a physicist, a chemist, and an economist who gets stranded on a desert island with a lone can of peas. And I'll tell you, it's funny as fuck because these fucking economists are fucking idiots. I'm sorry.
Well, that's not even my favorite economist story. Is like the physicist, the economist, and the psychiatrist are in a hole in the ground, and they try to figure out how to get out. And the economist says, "That's okay. We'll just suppose we have a ladder." Kind of thing. Yeah, that's my favorite. But the reason I have attention to this was, for good or ill, I'm one of those people who has those that beats that minimum threshold of investable assets, and I made the mistake of looking at my portfolio the past week, and I'm not happy.
Sure.
But needless to say, the things that have been concerning me, not just because of the timing that when you're about to get a slump like this, it usually happens in October, when you're about to see certain things, certain trends have happened that are going to happen for a recession. But when I was looking at some of the returns, I was getting a little bit nervous. So when I see Google have to make a significant downgrade, when I see Amazon making a significant downgrade, when I see a lot of the industrial companies saying we may have overstated the return of the manufacturing business, or we're worried about the tariff bullshit, blah 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 blah. This now begins to give bear players in the market a chance to do their thing. And the bears are starting to take over the market. For those of you who don't know, bull marketers are those who think the market's going to go up, we'll make money that way. The bears think, the market's going to go down, we'll make money by realizing that people.
And by the way, to those completely uninitiated, the reason it's bulls and bears is because a bull tosses you. Yeah, a bull tosses you up in the air. A bear knocks you down. Anyway, look. Yeah. If you look at the chart over the last 5 years, which I'm looking at now, right? We've had two peaks. It was steady growth from 2014 up to, let me see there, January of 18. It peaked out at 25.8, and then there was like a bit of a trough, and then it peaked out again in September 21st of 18. Now it's dropped roughly. I'm just eyeballing it. About 2,000 points. Which is, 1/13th, 7%, something like that. Okay. 8% roughly. Yeah. Fun? No. Probably we're going to have a third peak because these things, if you're into like chart reading, chart reading is a little bit like tea leaf reading, right? If you're into chart reading, it's usually you got, I'm looking at it now, and it seems that we're in a channel and we're about to touch a key threshold. If we break through that key threshold, then all bets are off. But I'm betting that we're going to bounce off this key threshold and make another peak in within the next 4 or 5 months, and then after that, then I think it's going to go down for real. Because these things usually like test their boundaries, 1, 2, 3 times, and usually on the third try, they break through their channel, right? And either they break upward or downward. And my thinking is that it's been too much growth, too much inflated growth over the last half decade. And the reason it's been overinflated is because of the low interest rates. Because for people who don't know, the doctor and I have talked about this privately at some length. See, what's happened in corporate America over the last decade is that with cheap money, that is low interest rate money, it is extraordinarily tempting for CEOs to basically go out, borrow money, and use that borrowed money to buy stock in the company, stock buybacks. And this inflates the price of the stock at relatively minimal cost. And therefore, the company, by doing these stock buybacks, ups the price of its stock and makes the C-suite, that is the CEO and the chairman of the board and what have you, it makes them all look real good for bonus time, right? And that's what's been happening to in a lot of industries where they're having relatively flat growth, where the growth of the market, the growth of the share of the market or whatever, the companies are just not expanding. And so they do this artificial move to prop up their stock price to make it seem as if they're doing gangbusters. And so they get the bonuses, right? That's what's been going on. It seems crazy, but well,
What makes sense given the incentive structure? I mean, this is something for all of you who will eventually get into business. You will realize the incentives your incentives govern almost all actions you do. And at the highest level in companies, for example, if a CEO gets his bonuses based on where the stock is relative to where he started, well, his incentives is all about what are you going to do with the stock.
Yeah.
But even at the lower level, if you're, let's say you're dealing with customer relations, if your incentives are, like, oh, if you sell a certain amount of product in this category, you get this percent versus this percent on another category, you're going to start selling a lot more products on the one category. Yeah. If your incentives were about customer experience and health, you're going to, make sure your customers are happy, internal profits be damned. Yeah. I guarantee this is my job to watch how incentives direct people's action. And this is the situation. Yeah. And the net result of a lot of the cheap money is, for those people who would have done the simpler thing, which is in the normal time, which is save your money, go to the bank, and the cost of money was not, held down through quantitative easing or what have you, you'd actually get a pretty good return on your investment there. Yep. There were periods of time when 5% plus interest rates, if not extraordinarily higher during those inflationary times, was common. Yep. Right? And now, the highest rates I've seen are under 2%. Yeah. And those are the highest rates. Most people get less than like 1/10%. Yeah. In their rate. And it's largely because of this situation that we're just describing. Yeah. So
you have to understand something.
And then
Yeah. And the other thing that you have to keep in mind is the famous acronym IBG-YBG, which means I'll be gone, you'll be gone. You see, a lot of these corporations, they don't have a problem. The people running them, they know that they're not going to be at that corporation forever, and they don't have any skin in the game. It doesn't matter to them if the company does well or badly in the long run. All that matters for them is the next quarter and keeping their CV spotless. So they're not going to have a problem over-indebting a company in order to prop up its share price so that they get a big bonus and they have the possibility of exiting on a high note, quote unquote, to some other position at some other company. IBG, YBG. That's their motto. And that's why these people are fucking... it's perverse incentives, okay? I wish that there was a mechanism by which there could be a clawback clause to their bonuses, whereby, if in 5 years the company is in dire straits, you have to pay back the bonus. That would be fucking lovely. But of course,
there are a lot of strategies that people have been trying to induce, but because the people who control the purse strings are in the IBG, YBG mindset, they don't do it. For example, risk-adjusted returns. This was especially important during those, for the financial industry with asset-backed securities. People would say, well, yes, we did well on these, but the risk of the downside was tremendous. So we should factor the downside into the returns you got. So if there was a chance of losing your shirt on that, you don't get the full credit of the positive side. You put us at risk, and we're going to dock that from your pay. And the incentive would be you actually go into more reasonably secure longer term assets. No one fucking does that because everybody's like, oh, I'm going to just cash out at the fucking quarter or whatever. Get the fuck out of my face, pansy.
Yeah, exactly.
And this is also partly the result. And this is my high horse that I don't know what to deal with, but so be it. It's the whole notion of publicly traded capital markets. As soon as you go into big, publicly traded business and you're operating under the rules of quarterly earnings and this, that, and the other, fuck it. It's all gone. It's all we're all just temporary stewards of a company that, yes, nominally the shareholders own, but nobody really owns in like a traditional sense where this is my company and I built it and I have investment and it's skin in the game. You don't really have that as much anymore. You have some, diversified bullshit of publicly traded companies, and it bothers me to no end. And it's one of the things that the president floated, and nobody really talked about it after a few weeks, but I actually thought it was a great idea. Didn't he said, like, maybe we should just move away from the SEC demanding quarterly reports and do it either trimesters or biannually.
Biannually,
it was actually a good idea, because that's 2 more extra months where you don't have to immediately worry about the next report. And trust me, as someone who sees how companies mind shift and what they're focused on shifts at the end of every 3 months, it would be a huge boon to have those extra.
Yes, it would. It would be a huge boon. I think, frankly, it should be yearly, with mid-year checkups, just to make sure that the company is not going bankrupt.
Reduced reporting needs. Like, just give me, you don't have to do the full reporting. Just give me the top, the top line key metrics that I want in the EBITDA and whatnot. And that's okay.
Yeah. Just to see that you're not going broke. Okay. But for most companies, it would be beneficial if it were like once a year kind of thing with a kick it into like a reduced trimestral filing, where it's just really reduced, just to a few key metrics, which is, again, for the SEC to make sure what the SEC wants as a regulatory body is reasonable. They want to know that the companies that they're supervising aren't going to go broke, that this isn't like some sort of Ponzi scheme or some kind of fraud going on. It's reasonable. But when you go into so much detail, it becomes an issue of just studying for the test, as opposed to actually building a company. And that's the problem. So if it were like one big report per year, at a date that the company can set, by the way, I see no reason why it has to be at a specific date for all companies. Just like your income tax filing, you can decide what your filing date. Yeah, well, actually, I don't know if you can do that in the United States. You can do it in other countries. But anyway, it would be a great system. But of course, it's never going to happen because there are too many incentives. It's just like income tax preparation in the United States. There's a huge business that makes a lot of money preparing people's taxes, and so they want to keep the tax preparation as complicated as possible so that they have employment. Ditto with this situation where there are so many people, accountants in particular, whose livelihood depends on these quarterly reports, that there's no incentive. Or let me phrase it, there's an active minority who's trying to prevent a good for the society. And by the way, that's something I want to talk about at some point in the future in the podcast, which is like the tyranny of the minority, where you have a small group of people who do things to the majority of the people that is detrimental to the majority, but at a very low level, but is very good for the minority. And so the minority sort of like inflicts this tyranny on the majority. And the majority doesn't seem to have any kind of weapon to stop that, especially now that there is no consensus insofar as morality is concerned, and therefore it's impossible to appeal to a generalized sense of morality like this is wrong, right? In this very fact of the tax preparation system, for instance, the vast majority of U.S. citizens, I'm talking 90%, at least 90%, they could do a tax report that's just a page long, because, the trivial shit, it's pennies here and there, it's nothing, okay? And they could do just a one-page report that they could just fill out, no biggie, But no, you have this tax preparation business and TurboTax and all this shit that they make a lot of money off of the overcomplicated tax system. And they are putting a lot of pressure, a lot of lobbying pressure to keep it complicated because it's their business. They make money off of it. And so their livelihood, since it depends on a complicated tax system, they will do whatever it takes to keep it complicated to the detriment of the 90%. Okay, let's say it's 80%, okay? Still, man, all that 80%, man, the hours, the aggravation and worry and stress that 80% suffers needlessly, because it really is needless. Because, 80% of the population earns under... I don't know.
They are under a certain amount, and it's from a single source of income.
Come on.
It should just be this amount at this rate,
and
that's what you pay. Boom, boom, boom. They shouldn't be. This is, you're going to get me on my horse. They shouldn't be taxing money you earn at interest at a bank. That just pisses me off to no end that they still charge people for that. And a couple of other things is like, if you're an investor, okay, you have different sources of income, you own your own business. Yeah, things get complicated because it's just complicated. But for the average person, it's just, I literally have this paycheck income stream.
Come on.
They should be able to fill it out themselves too. It should not be that complicated.
Yeah. It should be a simple procedure and fuck
page.
off. Yeah, exactly. Come on. I mean, anybody earning, frankly, the money we're talking about. Oh, okay, you have a household, and they're cheating a little bit on their taxes. How much are they cheating? $300, $500? Come on, in the fucking scheme of things, it means nothing. I mean, the capital gains tax, for instance, that's the fucking loophole that should be closed, man. And some, family earning $50,000 a year, and the guy's all sweating bullets because he's like, saying that his wife's business, deserves a write-off of like $200, and he's sweating bullets and potentially can get into a lot of trouble over something so fucking trivial. Come on, man.
Yeah, well, the system isn't designed to appeal to him; it's designed to appeal to folks like us. Sorry.
Yeah. And the TurboTax people. The TurboTax and the accountants and all those fucksticks. I mean, I fucking hate them, okay?
But I'm also of the mindset that once you reach a certain age and you have your own house, you shouldn't be paying taxes at a certain point. Like you're in your 70s and you're going to pay property taxes. Fuck off,
Yeah, fuck off. Yeah, exactly. I completely agree. I think that there should be like property taxes for the first 5 years of ownership of a property, perhaps. But after that, it's like grandfathered and fuck off. I mean, no, come on. There should be sunset clauses to property tax. I don't think that there should be property tax, quite frankly. I think it's immoral, because what it's basically saying that you're renting property from the state. That's what you're saying.
Yes, nobody owns anything in our country. In the reality of the matter,
that's what they're saying. Yeah, they're saying, well, if you don't pay the tax, i.e., the rent that the state is collecting, then we're going to take away your property. What the fuck is that? That's fucking wrong. Okay.
I know, and that leads into a lot of interesting discussions as to why, because it's clearly funding things you don't want to be funding, and I don't just mean like the IRS. I mean, every intervention in the world that you don't like, guess what's funding it? Every overreach of local political and judicial and police authority, guess what's funding it?
Yeah.
All of that shit. But I think the way we're going to have that discussion, honestly, you brought it up. Let's do Taleb's book, because Taleb's book brings up like half the things you brought up. Let's do it. Yeah,
let's do that. We'll be doing that in a near-term episode, because we got a lot of stuff to cover. Because this has been the Coach and Benway podcast, where we cover a lot of shit. And this has been the Weekly Bile episode for Saturday, October 27th, 2018, where we covered all kinds of insanity. And so, it's been terrific. And hope you enjoyed the show. And we will catch you soon. Take it easy.
Later.